Hello, I wanted to do a video about mindful eating as opposed to mindless eating. So this topic of eating, emotional eating, binge eating, weight, and how that affects our confidence and our self-esteem, that comes up all the time in my work. It came up this morning in a conversation with a coaching client. It's a theme that I'm running in my Facebook groups, Being Real, Becoming Whole, my free group, and also in my membership community, the Love Ladies community. It's a thread that I am talking about because I'm really passionate about this topic because it has profoundly affected my life and it profoundly affects the women that I work with and that I come across. So it's also a course that I want to develop and a book that I want to write about how to stop emotional overeating. So I just wanted to do this video. I have another video on this topic. But I'm thinking about the idea of mindful eating and about creating a gap or a space between stimulus and response. So what does that mean? That means that when you come through the door after a really crazy busy day at work, or after being triggered by something emotionally, and the first thing that you want to do is open the fridge or reach for something in the cupboard, it's about pausing. It's about pausing, creating a space between the stimulus, the thing that has triggered you and that is suggesting that you carry on eating, and the response, which is to eat. So creating a space between stimulus and response. So that, I believe, is a major step in learning to eat healthily and not to overeat. So even if you're sitting at the dinner table and you've finished your meal and you just want to eat more, and that happens to me, I think, I'm still hungry. But pausing and creating a space between that thought and the response, which would be to eat more. And then in that space, what can we do in that space? Well, we can ask ourselves what's really going on. We can ask ourselves, why do I want to eat more? What am I searching for? What am I seeking? Is it comfort? Is it love? Is it the sort of that cuddle that we can get from sort of eating too much, that sense of being comforted and held? Are we seeking that comfort? Are we seeking love? And if the answer is yes, how else can we meet that need? So our needs are there for a reason. They're not to be ignored or dismissed. We have needs for a reason, especially those deep emotional needs. So if you're feeling a need for comfort, how can you meet that need yourself? And I know that's not easy. I work with a lot of women who are single, so they don't have a partner who they can say, please comfort me, please soothe me. But even if we do have partners, sometimes we have to try and comfort. Often we have to try and comfort ourselves, and ideally we soothe ourselves first. Because our partners aren't always there, our friends aren't always there, and if they are, they can't always give us what we need. So in that space that we've created, why not try and take yourself away to a comforting place? So that could be your bed, it could be the sofa, you could grab a blanket. Wrap yourself in that and allow the feelings to come. And those feelings might be painful. And I always say, please don't be afraid of the pain, because the pain for me has always been a catalyst for growth. It has always been an indicator that I am growing emotionally. So please don't be afraid of the pain. So take yourself to a place where you can comfort yourself. Maybe that's your bed, maybe that's the sofa, maybe that's a bath. In my former days of being a compulsive overeater and a binge eater, often I had to leave the house to create that space between stimulus and response because the urge to eat was so strong. So sometimes I had to walk around the block. get out into nature, change my perspective, change my context as soon as possible. So if I'm in the flat or the house, out of the flat. If I'm doing one thing, do something else. Take myself out, change my view. Sometimes if I found the courage, I could ring somebody up in that moment. And that was the hardest thing for me to do. It was the hardest thing for me to ring somebody before I wanted to overeat. So how I began is that I rang somebody afterwards. So I would binge eat or overeat, and then I would feel the pain. And this only came after many years of doing this and being in denial about it. It was only when I came out of denial about the fact that I was self-harming rather than self-loving, that out of the denial, then I was able to realise what I was doing to myself. So when I overate, I felt pain. And so then I could ring somebody, ring a friend, particularly a friend who was on a similar journey to me, who was struggling with overeating. I could ring a friend and try and share what I had done. And that takes the shame away, because the thing for me about overeating and binge eating was the shame that I felt. The shame because of what I had eaten, the embarrassment because there were all these wrappings around or remains of food, but the shame also about how I felt about my body. That I didn't want to be seen, because no matter my size or shape, the fact that I was harming myself meant that I really disliked my body. So calling someone and telling them what I had done after I had done it helped to moderate that shame. And then eventually I managed to call somebody beforehand and share and say, I really want to eat right now. And they could say, well, what do you really need? What do you need in this moment? What do you need? Do you need to self-soothe? Do you need me to soothe you? What can I say to help you? How can I support you? Now, if you can't make those calls, if you can't have that conversation, and if you don't know who to have it with, try and have it with yourself. So try and separate, if possible, the adult from the child. It's the child who has these instant gratification responses. Give me sugar, give me chocolate, give me toast. So if you can try and separate the adult from the child, and as the adult, ask the child, what do you need? How can I soothe you? How can I help you? Depending on the degree of awareness that you have and how deep this issue goes for you and how difficult it is. I was saying to my client this morning that really a lot of us need to slow down and to really feel the feelings that are underneath this desire to soothe ourselves, to overeat. What are the feelings? And as I said earlier, we don't want to feel pain. Of course we don't want to feel pain, and we will do anything to avoid it, which in my case used to mean eating an entire box of cereal with loads of yogurt, and then when the yogurt ran out, eating the cereal on its own. And I wonder if you've ever tried to eat dry oats with no milk or yogurt. It's not a pleasant experience. They get stuck in your throat, and and I remember that moment of eating those dry oats and them being stuck in my throat and me sort of falling off the sofa in my flat in London and crying. And that's all I managed to do, and then crawling into my bed because it was a compulsion. I couldn't stop it. And because I was filling that void inside with something that would never meet that void. So dry oats were not going to meet the void. They weren't going to meet the need for love, comfort, and they weren't going to fill that hole. That hole was love-shaped. It was shaped differently to a pile of oats. So how else can I meet that void? How else could I have met that void? Spirituality is one thing that I talk about. It's about asking somebody or something greater than you to help you to do something that you cannot do yourself, that you cannot do under your own steam. So I wonder what works for you. I pray, I talk to God, whatever works for you, nature, the sky, the sea, the universe, something, an idea of something that you can trust, something much greater than yourself, something you can surrender to, something you can say, please help me, I can't do it on my own. And especially for women who are uber capable and who have spent their entire lives being self-sufficient and self-supporting and haven't really felt like they've got a safety net or a backup, it's incredibly hard to ask for help. It's incredibly hard to surrender. Believe me, I know how hard it is. But sometimes we have to, in my case, I had no choice. Like, my way of doing things really had stopped working. So I had to find a different way of doing things. So find something greater than yourself that can help you. It often helps me to get my feelings out on paper. So writing, journaling, writing them down is a really good way to separate myself from that urge to overeat. And, it's years on now since I got into recovery from my eating disorder. And food will probably always be my first port of call when I'm feeling down, stressed, depressed, when I need soothing. It's so easy, it's so accessible, and for many years it worked. But now, even if I do overeat a little bit, I know that it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't take the pain away. In fact, it piles on more pain and more shame. And I did that to myself for so many years, and I'm not prepared to do that to myself anymore. If you have been behaving in one way for your entire life, it is very difficult to change that. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is entirely possible. So I had been messing around with food, binging, starving, trying to lose weight, trying to get rid of the calories. Began before the age of 10 and continued till my early 30s. So I had several decades of doing it that way, and so it wasn't going to change overnight. But the awareness, knowing what I was doing to myself, feeling the pain, feeling the feelings, understanding what I needed in that moment, what were my needs, what needs was I trying to fill, creating a gap between stimulus and response, getting support from people who are on the same journey, from fellows, from friends, and from God or a form, something higher than, greater than myself. They all helped. They all helped me find my way. So this is a taster of a online course that I would love to create. I'm in the process of creating, and of another book that I would love to write. You all know my current book, maybe you don't, it's called How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart. And there's a lot in there about my journey from self-harm and self-hate to self-love and self-care, about my how I managed my food and how I recovered from that, but primarily how I learned to love and accept myself. And I think self-acceptance is self-love, self-acceptance, and is so important. And I remember things shifted for me with my eating when, after eating, I stopped beating myself up. I stopped running around the park when I'd eaten too much. I stopped trying to lose the weight instantly. Instead, I loved myself through it. So I would like to encourage you to connect to the feelings, to create a gap between stimulus and response, to love yourself through it, to feel any feelings that are there, to let the pain out because it's there anyway and it's sabotaging your life, to get support where you can. And thanks for watching, and do get in touch if you have any questions. Catherine@catherinebaldwin.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.